So you'd like to use a Google form for making an assessment. Here's what you need to get started with your Google form. First of all, go to google.com and log in using your nfld.k12.mn.us Google account. We all have Google accounts. It's the same login information as our email or logging in for Novell. Once you're in Google, you'll want to go to Google Drive, and there's up in the upper right hand corner a little grid that you'll see, and that takes you to kind of all the different Google tools. We're going to work in Drive for creating forms and documents and spreadsheets and such. And once you're in Drive, you'll have the opportunity to click on the red box for creating a new item. It could be any type of item. But down all the way at the bottom where you see More, you can choose Google Forms, and then you're ready to get started making your first form. The first thing that you should do is give your form a title. That will save it with a name. It will be easy to find later on. It will be right in your Google Drive the next time you log in from any computer. So go ahead, click on Untitled Form. That pops up a little box for you to name your form. Type in your name. You can always change it later. And click OK, and then it's saved for you. So now you're getting ready to actually create your assessment, or you can also just use this tool to gather information or data from people. The top box, the form settings, is the first place to start. It's an easy box to overlook, and I recommend you start there so you don't forget. So the top box, require Northfield Public Schools login to view this form, is checked by default, and I recommend that you uncheck that. That just means that anybody who clicks on the link when you share out your form and you're all done with it can actually take it, and they don't have the step of logging in, which sometimes might be preventative of somebody getting in if they don't remember their username or password or something like that. If you want some of the other choices, you will need them to log in. Things like collecting their username automatically. You would then not need a name form, for example. Showing the progress form at the progress bar at the bottom of the form is only necessary if you have multiple pages to your form. Only allow one response per user, which would require a login, is a nice tool if you want to use a form for maybe a student council vote or something like that, where you would only want people to be able to use one response. And then shuffle question order, if you wanted your questions to appear in random order, you could choose that as well. So I'm making a basic quiz here, just a little sample called a calendar quiz. I'm going to start adding my questions. There's a couple of things that you can do when you add your questions, but the first ones that you're going to want to put in there are your last name, first name, and email address. And you can choose if you actually want to separate out last name or not. For me, I just like it because it clarifies for the person taking the form. I only want last name here, and then the next one I'll only want first name, and it gives me one more option for how I sort my data in my spreadsheet when it's all said and done. Here's where you choose what type of question you'd like. When you want people to type in a word, it's a text question. And then you can choose if you want it to be required or not. So check the box for required, at least for your identifiers, because you wouldn't want anybody to be able to skip those questions. And then also the email address. You need email address if you want to be able to email results from your form, and you can do that. You can email graded results, which is a nice thing. Here's an example of help text where I just want to remind people, type carefully. If your email address is incorrect, it won't work. And so my first three questions look like that. Last name, first name, email address. The little red asterisk indicates that they are required questions. And now I'm ready to start with some of my assessment questions. You may also choose in the identifiers to have a drop-down list of what teacher a student has if you want to be able to tell. If you want to be able to get data by class or even what grade level, if it's an assessment that might be multiple grade levels, or if you're a coach who works with students in multiple grade levels, you might choose to have that option as well. So when you add your questions, here's the basic kinds that you get. You can have a text question. A paragraph text just gives a bigger space for responding. A multiple choice, which would allow the responder to choose just one of the choices. Checkboxes would allow the responder to use multiple selections for their answer. Choose from a list will be a drop-down menu. And then the scale, these say advanced, but they're not so advanced. Scale just lets you have a rating scale of some sort. I'll show that later. Grid lets you choose columns and rows, where each one has a little button that you could align the correct row with the correct column. And then date and time, you can have little drop downs for entering a date or entering a time. And there are certain times when that's helpful if you wanted to, for example, track something that happens in a science lab and you have a journal entry and you want to put in a date and time. That might be a useful piece. And then these other parts of layout, those can be really helpful for just breaking up parts of your form if you have different sections of an assessment, or if you wanted to include like a text excerpt that students would read and then respond to. You could do that with a section header. Page break just is going to do exactly what that says, a page break, where it lets you have multiple pages of information that really shows some separation between maybe the content that's on each page. And then image or video. You may have a photo or video that you want students to respond to, and you can insert that image or that video, and then the next questions would reference it. One more thing about the page break. You do have the opportunity, if you're really advanced with your forms, to use, say, a multiple choice or a choose from a list and have respondents go to a certain page of your form based on what they choose in the answer to a question. So it can be really tailored to, if this is my situation, I'm going to go to this next page. If I respond one way to a multiple choice question, it's going to take me to a different page. So that's kind of nice as well if you have something that you might need that for. So here's a couple of examples of what the questions look like. You do get some choices that you can make. In choose from a list, you can add as many possible choices to that list as you would like. And then you can also, like I was saying before, check the box if you want respondents to go to a certain page based on the selection that they make in this question. You're going to need your pages already created for that, because it's going to ask you then which page you want them to go to. Here's what the date and time ones look like. You do get some other choices with those as well. If you choose to have a question of date, you can choose whether or not you want the year included. It does give the little calendar pop-up, which is kind of nice, so you can click on the date. You could maybe even use something like this for conference preferences. And then the time as well, if you would like it. And then a rating scale looks like something like this. You can pick if you want to start at 0 or 1, and then you can pick what your top number is going to be as well. And then you also get to label what each end of your scale represents. And then the paragraph text is just the bottom one there. It allows for a little bit bigger space, which tells your respondent that you would like a little bit more in-depth answer than just a word or two. So once you've created all of your questions, you're ready to share your form and get some responses. You have a few choices to make. At the top menu bar, edit questions is where you're editing your questions. You can change your questions, you can add questions, you can move questions in order in the form, however you'd like to do. Change theme is going to make your form actually look nice for the end user. View responses will show you your spreadsheet of responses. You can see I have one response into this form, and so I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. And then view live form takes you to actually see what does my form look like when somebody's ready to take this form. Send form is how you actually share your form out. And so once you click on send form, a little box pops up like this where you get a link that you can copy, and you can paste that link wherever you need it for people to be able to access your form. So that's the quick overview of the forms. Also, when you're sharing your form, just so you know, this link, if you share out that link and people click on it, it will open up the form for them to take it. It will not open up the part where they can edit questions or where they can see responses or anything of that nature. If you do want people to be able to edit the form, say you have a teaching team that you're working with, add collaborators right there is what you would need to click on, and then you can share it with their Google accounts. Click done whenever you're done copying your link or sharing with other teachers. And then here's what it looks like when you actually look at the responses. So when you click on view responses, they'll open up in a new tab, and you can see that I've filled this in one time, and so my responses are there, and they're just in a spreadsheet with each individual response going into its own column. So that's actually enough if you want to do a pretty simple assessment and just be able to view the responses. You can do that, and then you're ready to get going with your Google Forms. If you want the grading piece, you'll need to do the add-on of Flubaroo, which is in a separate video.